this particular event. So, right, we've got a lot of things to cover, and unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to cover everything in 45 minutes, but hopefully this will give you a bit of an insight into really just the opportunity that's open to largely what I think we have here is a Queensland audience. So we've given this definitely a Queensland flavour. So a little bit about GovReady. Essentially, we exist to help SMEs, small to medium businesses, firstly get ready for government opportunities, and then to help them find them and win them. And that's really the ultimate reason why we exist. I'm going to give you a little bit. I hate going to those events where someone gets up and talks to a bunch of PowerPoints, and you don't know where they're sort of coming from. So I'll give you a bit of an origin story. Back in the early 2000s, I was general manager of a professional services firm in Brisbane. I was a state manager, and the only sector that we weren't having any success with was government. And that really, really, really frustrated me, because we were a good business and we were losing all these opportunities to two of our big competitors. And I got the green light to basically dedicate half of my role to figuring out the government jigsaw puzzle, and that's really what it ended up being. My boss gave me the luxury. I actually took I was in the wilderness for about 4 years. I realized at the end of that I was really just firing a shotgun blindly, trying to figure out how to actually, find, win, fulfill government contracts. So 4 years of crickets, tumbleweeds, you name it. You name the mistake, I actually made it. And I'm going to cover off a few of those today. If you talk to me more later after this event, I'll tell you heaps more mistakes that I've made or that I made then. But during that 4 years, what was happening was my government network was growing. Any meeting I had with what I call government decision makers or decision influencers, I was trying to unpack and trying to figure out what they look for in their small business partners, how they want small businesses to engage with them. And really, over a decent period of time, I pieced together the government puzzle, if you like. And we started winning some smaller contracts and then some larger ones, until government was about 30% of our revenue. And that's where we stopped. Mainly on the advice or wisdom of a lot of my government network, who sort of saying, that's great that you're invoicing us now and working with government, but the government can also turn the tap off pretty quickly. And there's been plenty of examples of businesses who have locked themselves into one or two particular departments or contracts, change of government, change of policy, change of anything, and then suddenly that revenue can dry up really, really quickly. So fast forward to about 2017, I was in my early 40s. I always wanted to be a published author. I always wanted to write a book. And I don't know whether it was a midlife crisis or whatever, but I decided to go and do that. And then I had to figure out what I wanted to write about. I love local communities. I've got 3 young boys. So it wasn't until we had kids that I realized how valuable the local community is to, takes a village to raise a tribe, and that's absolutely the case. So I suspect that most businesses here would fall into that SME category, the small to medium business category. And whether you know it or not, 44 cents in every dollar you earn or your business earns stays within your local community. Big business, it's ridiculously low compared to the SME sector. So figuring that out, I wanted to write a book which would help small business SMEs to basically directly impact in a positive way their local communities. And what I figured that I knew, which a lot of small and medium businesses don't, is how to basically how to win government contracts, how to get ready for them and how to win them. So that was where my book came about. Just before the first lockdown, it was published. I got it literally 2 days before that first lockdown, and things have really escalated from there. And the only reason we exist, GovReady was born soon after that. I might, if I've got time, sort of go into a bit more detail of that. So that gives you a bit of background on me. So hopefully that helps. Excuse me too if I sniff a little bit. I've woken up this morning with Murphy's Law with a bit of a cold or something. So happily this is a webinar, so I can't infect anyone. But what are we going to talk about? The real thing I want to focus on this slide is the second bullet point there. And this has all come about due to COVID. Once COVID hit, small business sector, all business was smashed, but particularly small to medium businesses were hit hard. State government, to their credit, realised this pretty quickly, and they set a target that government procurement was government procurement through smaller businesses was then set at 25%. Now, as of July of last year, that moved to 30%. Depending on who you talk to, that equates to around about a $7 billion opportunity, give or take, every year, which is slated to go to the small to medium business sector. And first preference, if there are suppliers, should be Queensland based. Ideally, doesn't always work out like that. So this was awesome. This was a huge win for the small to medium business sector. Sadly, not enough businesses actually understand or actually are aware that government have these targets in place. Because what we need is when I say we, I'm not government. The government needs more smaller businesses here in Queensland putting their hand up saying we're ready. And hopefully off the back of today, we'll have another, I don't know, 1, 2, 5, 10 businesses who really see the opportunity that's open to them through government contracts. Now we've flavoured this today with a little bit more on IT and digital comms, digital services. So to give you a bit of an idea, we're going to give you a bit of a snapshot. This is not exhaustive, this list. But we're going to focus a little bit around some panels and some opportunities for the IT and digital services. So this gives you a little bit of a snapshot as to the types of services in the IT landscape and digital services that government look for at different times. And this list, again, is by no means exhaustive. I didn't want to fill 3 or 4 slides with all of the other categories as well, but this should give you a bit of an idea in the IT and digital services landscape as to what government are looking for a lot. So here, this slide here is just a snapshot. We've just picked a handful, I don't know, there's 10 or 15 contracts that have been awarded over the last 12 months. This is not a complete list. We've just grabbed a few for the purposes of today. I guess the column, I mean, you have a look at this slide and gives you a bit of an idea of the type of contract it is. And we'll give you a little bit of a description there and the value of the contract. But see that the column next to it, next to value, you'll see bids. And this is actually the number of businesses that actually put forth a submission to actually try and fulfill these particular contracts. So hopefully what you're seeing here is that some of these in particular, there's not many businesses who are actually putting their hand up and letting government know that they're ready to compete and win and fulfill government contracts. So we get this a lot. Yeah, we get a lot of clients who are a lot of businesses throughout Australia who I know are hell bent on winning grants, applying for grants and trying to, and one example was, I think earlier this year, the Business Basics grant. It was a $5,000 grant that went out. I think it was a $2.5 million pool. Do the math on how many businesses actually won. But there were thousands and thousands and thousands of businesses who applied for that Business Basics grant. So highly, highly competitive, as a lot of grants are. And when that Business Basics grant when they were awarded, it really blew me away, like the anger and the vitriol from a number of different online groups about, oh, look, we spent all this time putting together our submission and we had to get a JP to sign off on it. We had to get our account and and the lost productivity time in the business for a $5,000 grant. Now, there's probably a few businesses here that went for that grant. I'm not having a go. Really what I'm trying to illustrate here is that there are there's a lot less competition actually trying to partner with government and solve a particular problem for them. And this is the evidence that that I'm showing you here. I mean, 3 businesses. Look at that first one: IT telecoms, digital engagement platform for criminal justice, $115,000 contract, and there were 3 businesses that actually made a submission for that. Sadly, it went to a Victorian business, and if there's any big businesses here, sorry, but I love Queensland. So those ones in particular are really frustrating when we do this research, because I've got no doubt that there is a bunch of Queensland businesses, local businesses, who could have fulfilled this opportunity, but for whatever reason, haven't put a submission through. Some of these bids as well that have highlighted, they've only had 1 submission. So hopefully this gives you a bit of an idea. This is, again, just a little snapshot. State government procures $20 to $22 billion worth of products and services every year. So this is just a small drop in the ocean compared to that much bigger opportunity that's out there. And this just summarizes it there. That average contract value from that previous slide, almost $1 million. 6 out of 14 of them were actually Queensland-based SMEs that won. So that I'm sort of happy with. But we'd love that number. I'd love to see that number going north of, 80–90% would be what I believe we need to be aiming for. If you do have a location here in Brisbane. So knowledge, I hear the term knowledge is power a lot. I'm not a massive believer of that, but knowledge is certainly is understanding. And to understand government and government opportunities, you really need to know where to look. So I won't do the put your hand up and give me a poll. I'm going to assume that some businesses here, I would say at least half of you, are registered for Q tenders. So Q tenders is Queensland state government's tender notification site. So you go into Q tender, and just by the way, we've got a slide at the end where you've got links for all of these sites that I'm referencing now. Q tenders, you go into Q tenders, you set up your very quickly, take no more than 5 minutes, set up a profile, and then you will get emailed opportunities that the government's going to market with whenever that happens. So good site. Not perfect, but those notifications, we test it every day, and those notifications do come through. Problem is, not many people are aware of this, but give or take, it's only about 15% of what state government goes to market with actually comes out of Q tenders. So there's many businesses, and I dare say there'll be a handful of businesses here who are registered on Q tenders. You might be of the belief that all government opportunities come out of Q tenders. That's absolutely not the case. So you need to be aware of that. We're going to talk about a couple of things that, or the next bullet point actually. There's 6 buying categories for Queensland government, and panels have been set up. Many different panels have been set up, which we're going to go into in a bit more detail. But basically, a panel is a pre-qualified group of businesses that government can basically procure from much more simpler than they would be if you're not on a panel. So panels are really a big chunk of what doesn't go out to market sits inside those panels. For the feds, Oz tenders is where you need to register. So that Oz tenders has all of the federal government's panel arrangements, as well as when you register, they'll go to tender as well for different things at different times, and you'll get notifications sent through to them. From a local government perspective, Local Buy is the organisation that you would need to definitely speak with, have a chat with, check out. They have a lot of arrangements. They call them local government arrangements or panel arrangements. And beautiful thing about Local Buy is most of their panels are reviewed every 3 to 6 months. So they're opened up to new suppliers every 3 to 6 months. with Oz tenders and with Q tenders, that's not the case. So a panel could be opened up and it might be in place for 2 years or 3 years. And unless there's a refresh or unless they find a reason to open up again to new suppliers, you can be locked out for a long period of time, which is not the case with local bias panel arrangements. And then the forward procurement pipeline. This basically gives businesses a snapshot as to what Queensland government is looking to purchase over the next 12 months. And it's not a bad site. The only real problem with it is that, so you can, we looked in there about a week or two ago, and there was a contract coming up of like an anticipated spend of $1.5 million for gloves. So this forward procurement pipeline is good. It's a good tool for small business because it gives you time, a little bit more time to prepare. You can sort of see what's coming up, and you can filter on this site. You can filter it by location, by spend, by department. But the elephant in the room, if you like, is that not all government departments post upcoming opportunities into the forward procurement pipeline. So it's not an exhaustive list, but it does give you some idea. Really good places to start the journey, so to speak. If you're not aware as well, there is a Buy Queensland policy in place. What does this really mean? It means government, our local councils, we want to look at a small level, local councils are going to look in their local area first. And I'm giving you an example, their Moreton Bay Council. They give incentives anywhere up to 15% if you're a local business. So before they even read your submission, you're going to get anywhere up to 15% assessed in your favour because you are part of the that's changed now. They're actually the city of Moreton Bay. So they're looking for local suppliers. And for Moreton Bay in particular, any contracts under the value of $50,000, they must look at local businesses first. All right, that's a big thing. A 50K contract is not a, in the grander scheme of things, it's not a huge contract for your bigger businesses, but for your small businesses, a 50K contract can mean the difference between an average month and a great month, or an average or a good year and a great year. Most Queensland councils have that local buy policy in place as well. So we're just giving you an example there of Moreton Bay. So again, I'll emphasize again, 30% now of all procurement has been targeted for Queensland government to go to the small to medium business sector. And again, this is what I would love a few businesses here to take away, that the opportunity here is absolutely massive. All right, little quick question. I love quizzes. I love trivia. So since 2018, the Buy Queensland policy has seen how much distributed, how much money distributed into our SME business sector. So 3.6 billion, 13.6 billion, or $36 billion. Feel free if you want to chuck it in the chat box, but I'm going to move on pretty quickly. But get your mental answer in place. Those of you who picked $36 billion, well done. Most of this has actually gone to local businesses as well. So again, more evidence that if you're not putting your hand up for government contracts now, in my experience, and I've sort of been in this field now since the early 2000s, there's never been a better time to be targeting government contracts, ever. And leading up to the Olympics, I don't expect that's going to change. It's not going to change. So what I'm going to show you now is just 4 panels. We've just picked 4 panels at random. There's of these panel arrangements. I'll just explain panels for those of you who don't know. So let's just use PPE, personal protective equipment. We'll use the COVID example. All right, so when COVID hit, government understand that they're going to need to purchase a lot of PPE. Just as this example, you can insert whatever you want here. They knew they were going to have to purchase a lot of PPE. So instead of having to go out to market via Q tenders every time they want to purchase 5,000 units or whatever it might be, they sort of stop and they go, right, let's set up a panel arrangement. We'll invite all businesses who want to make a submission to get on that panel. And those that are successful, those that get assessed, they're basically pre-qualified. So you get onto that panel arrangement, and Queensland government buyers are supposed to be looking to purchase from pre-existing panel arrangements, if at all possible. And we've got Matthew Rose, awesome guy from government. He's going to be talking shortly, so he might talk to this a little bit more as well. But these panels, basically what you need to know is being on a panel makes it simpler and easier for government buyers to purchase your product or service. So using that PPE example, they might have got 10 businesses which were approved to go onto that particular panel. And then whenever government needs to purchase PPE, they can just go straight to that panel. Don't have to go to market, don't have to go to key tenders, don't have to go through any of that. They can look at those suppliers off the panels. Now, inevitably, there's probably going to be at least one or two businesses here who goes, yes, puts their hand up and says, yep, we've been on a panel for 2 years and we've got nothing off it and it was a waste of time, et cetera, et cetera. We put in so much effort to get onto it. I'll tell you now, getting onto a panel is actually the easy part. And it's not easy to get onto a panel, but that's the easy part. It's what you do once you're on the panel that will actually determine how successful your business is underneath that panel arrangement. So a lot of businesses, when they find out they've got on a panel, they'll celebrate and crack a few beers and wine and then sort of sit back and wait for all these government opportunities to come in. Quite often that doesn't happen. It's not the case. Panels, getting on the panel, congrats, that's great. You've done it, fantastic. It's then exactly what you do once you're on that panel, which is going to sort of determine how much success you see from it. So there's a couple of things you can sort of take away from this. This is Digital Capability Development Partnership Agreement. Few things that I want you to note of. Obviously, the categories, subcategories, and the products that sit underneath this panel. And then they'll give you a bit of a description about the businesses in the panel. But the one that I want you to note of is the expiry date as well. So this is due to expire on the 19th of February 2024. So what are we? September, about 5-6 months away. If this panel gets extended, I think it will, but they don't always get extended. If it does get extended, then it will quite often be opened up or what they call refreshed, and new suppliers will be encouraged to make a submission to try and secure a place on this panel. All right, so that expiry date is important. Don't even bother, unless your business is ready. Getting onto a panel is going to be more difficult, far more difficult, unless your business is actually ready to do it. But again, I'll speak to a few of those things around that shortly. Now we're going for time. All right, we'll just speed this up. The next three panels, I'll sort of skip through a little bit. This is the ICT services panel. This is slated to expire 31st of December 2023, so not too far away. There's a lot of businesses on this particular panel. This is one also that we believe that a number of businesses here in this presentation today should consider getting onto. Then we've got marketing services as well. This is a pretty big panel. March next year, this will expire. Advertising, brand development, copywriting, product, digital strategy, social media, you name it, government needed. So if there's any marketing and comms people, this is a panel that you would definitely want to be considering getting onto. And then we've got multimedia, instructional videos, motion graphics, photography, graphic design, and this is due to expire in March of March of next year. There were plenty of other panels as well, which are slated to expire before June 30, 2024. And these are all panels which you would seriously need to consider getting on, because again, we want to make it as simple and easy for government buyers to purchase from you. Panels are a really nice way to go about doing that. There's a bunch of myths around which is in my travels. I'd sort of put smaller businesses off from bidding and winning government contracts. And there's about 8 to 10 of them that are pretty common. Don't have time today to go through everything. I'm going to give you the top three. So many businesses believe they're too small to work with government. We're only tiny. We're only one man band, or we've only got a couple of people in the business. The average dollar amount of a government contract is $60,000. Okay, so I know there's businesses here, probably most businesses who are on this event today, who can safely fulfill and service a $60,000 contract. So don't think that because you're a small business, I mean, there are sole traders, there are micro businesses here who are servicing some very large government contracts. So don't think your business is too small. Second one is we get this a bit too. Our government will never need my product or service. And back in the day, I thought that as well for a lot of businesses. There's almost nothing the government doesn't purchase at some stage. What did we see a month or two ago? It was a $1.2 million contract for shark bait, hairdressers, pressure cleaning. I don't know what the term is, the technical term, but removing barnacles and stuff off the bottoms of boats. You name it, government need it, will probably need it at some particular stage. So the caterers, something that's just catering companies. We looked at the hairdressing one because there's two businesses who started off bidding for government contracts, two hairdressers about 10 years ago, and they started off as tiny businesses. They're now multinationals. My sister's a hairdresser, so I've spoken to her about this a lot. She's asked a lot of her colleagues. Thing is that most hairdressing businesses don't even think that the government are going to need them at some particular stage. But you think about it, aged care, prisons, you name it, you might not want those contracts if you're a hairdresser, but there are many, many opportunities out there. And another one too, we can't compete with the big boys. That's all, it's in the eye of the beholder, I believe. There's many incentives in place that the government have, all levels, local, state, federal, in order to help level the playing field. And COVID's accelerated this as well. Government are now proactively looking for small businesses. They're looking for Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander businesses. They're looking for businesses with disabilities. All of these categories, female majority-owned businesses, they all have targets in place in order to make sure that more smaller businesses are encouraged to compete for these billions and billions of dollars of government contracts. Couple of big mistakes. I could talk about this for a couple of hours because God, I made so many mistakes back in the day. 3 big takeaways. Don't sell to government decision makers. They're sick of it. I got a lot of people inside government. They are decision makers, and it's just white noise to them now. Whenever they get a new potential supplier who gets 5 minutes with them, it's just a full-on sales pitch, and it's just turned into white noise. Don't get me wrong. Government need to know who you are. They need to know that your business exists. They need to know the problem you solve, but they don't need you to give them that hard pitch at every single opportunity. Because there's statistically, right? You think about this. When you get an opportunity with a government decision maker, you're at a networking event, or maybe some opportunity comes up, chances are they don't actually need your product or service at that particular time. So there's no point in giving them a hard pitch. Again, they need to know the problem you solve. I'll give you an example, right? I love this example because it summarizes things perfectly. Was a company called Wemo. They've been bought out now, but one word, Wemo, capital W, little e, capital M-O-W, Wemo. The problem they solve is we give people back their weekends. I'm a father of 3. I love this one because my weekends are spent shepherding kids around to football and parties and all sorts of stuff. Wemo mows lawns, but that's the problem they solve, right? They give you time back. So really, if this is not an easy exercise, we get every single one of our clients to sit down and try and boil down the ultimate problem they solve into one sentence. Not an easy exercise, but when you land on it, it's gold. And then we want that on the front page of your website. Don't miss a debrief opportunity. Debriefs, you know, if you bid for your first government contract, more than likely you're going to lose. And we got heaps of knockbacks back in the day. I didn't know it at the time, but you can request a debrief. All right, so you can actually sit down with a government official and get some insight into where you went wrong and also where you went right. And we tell our clients, ask for a debrief when you win as well, because we need to know, you want to know what they love, and we want to use that for future future contracts. But get that debrief, request the debrief. Bit of advice on the debrief: don't do what I did for my first one, where I just rocked up and wasn't really prepared, and they just resorted back to price. Oh, you're a bit too expensive. Yeah, thanks, but no thanks. Instead, send them a list of questions about 2 weeks before the debrief, meeting. Because chances are in the debrief, you're not going to be talking to, you may not be talking to an actual person who's actually done the assessment of your submission. So send them that list. It'll force them to actually go up the chain a little bit, ask some more questions. And then when they do meet with you, you're going to get a lot more better intel and insight into where you went wrong. And the other mistake, big mistake we made, when we started bidding, we weren't ready. There's a number of things the government look for in their suppliers. And the first couple of years, we had no idea. So getting ready is a key part. We want to be an attractive partner for government and decision makers. Just a little bit of insight on what government, not everything they look for, but they are obviously looking for value for money. It's taxpayers' dollars, right? My advice, we have clients come to us and say, oh, what pricing should we go in at? I have no idea, all right? You know your business better than us. The only advice we can give you on pricing is be fair. You need to obviously make a profit, but do not rip government off. Eventually, they're going to find out about it. Word travels, and you're probably not going to get many more opportunities. So fair price is my really big takeaway for this. Environmental protection, sustainability for the Olympics as well. This is a big one. There's rumours that government will be looking at preferencing businesses who have sustainability practices in place. It is a climate-friendly games, so you want to be looking at some sort of sustainability policy in place. Business Chamber Queensland have an EcoBiz program, which is free. It's heavily subsidised, or completely subsidised by Queensland government, which is awesome. And that would be something that I would definitely recommend for you if you have no sustainability practices in place. We're looking for ethical suppliers, and they're going to look in their own, in government's going to be looking in their own backyards first. So there is weighting given, some serious weighting given for businesses here in Queensland. All right, with that, I'm going to hand over to Matthew Rose, who's really kindly agreed to join us today. Matthew's a legend, I think, in government. I consider him a networker. He brings private sector and government together. So he kindly agreed to give us maybe 5 minutes of a bit of insight into things a few things that hopefully might help a few people who are listening in today. So with that, Matthew, thank you. I'll hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Thomas, and thank you for the invite. So I sit within the ICT category in a whole of government role. So my role is industry engagement. So what does that mean? It means I help suppliers, a bit like Thomas, sell to the government by making you aware of all of our, I call them the 4 Ps: policy, process, procurement, and people. What do you need to know? Who do you need to connect with? How do you get that business? The good news is that I've been in this role for a while now, and in that time, spend with SMEs has literally doubled. There's a lot more promotion goes on across government about SMEs, particularly since the official target came in 3 years ago around Queensland SMEs. So that's a big focus of my role. We manage that policy holistically for government, and we're trying to apply it further across the local entities. So one of the key points Thomas made earlier was that it's all very well and good to sign up to Q tenders, but 85% of procurement does not go through Q tenders. It goes through panels or SOAs, standing offer arrangements. It's a fairly common term. We manage 32 whole of government panels for ICT. So they tend to be the larger enterprise type arrangements, your Microsoft, your SAP, your Oracle, Adobe, those types of things. But we do have a general services panel, which was referenced on the slide earlier. That's 1303B. That's an important one because that's the only panel which is actually open now. We don't advertise that fact purely because it's an old panel. It's 10 years old. Some of the categories are a bit outdated. We are looking to replace it next year. We have been for a while, but it's a big task. But almost 50% of the suppliers on that panel are Queensland-based SMEs. So I just wanted to talk about Tom's point on the chat. Tom was asking about how do you know when to approach the owner of a panel about when it expires. A key thing to remember is that the expiry date as listed on that directory is typically the end of the initial term. There usually would be extension options. Now, what we try and do here centrally is encourage all departments, because the larger departments like education, health, transport also have their own panels, which tend to be a bit more bespoke depending on what they're delivering. We encourage very strongly, in line with the Queensland procurement policy, that you need to, in order to meet these targets for Queensland SMEs, for First Nations, for social enterprises, you need to diversify your panels, add more suppliers on. Perhaps outside of a formal process, we try to accommodate that here. We have a big telco and unified comms panel, which actually has been refreshed probably 3 times in as many years. It's a lot of work for us, but we've now onboarded probably more SMEs than it's ever seen, because we want them to compete with the bigger players. We know there are niche things, especially emerging in telecommunications, artificial intelligence, all those types of things where we need to have procurement places for them. So my role is very much industry facing, but it's also I connect in with all the procurement managers across government. So it is important to get onto their radar, because as we said, 85% of procurement goes through them just getting their quotes from their local panels or from the panels which we own. So probably the most common questions I get asked in my role, and Thomas probably gets the same questions, I've seen all these SOAs and panels I want to join, can I just join them? The answer is generally no. If you've missed that initial approach to market or the refresh, then you have to wait. Our services panel probably is the exception to that. I also get asked, what's your threshold for going to market? How many quotes do you get? Now, the key thing to remember here is there are 21 departments, there are 21 thresholds. It's not ideal. Every department has their own process, their own culture, the way they do things, and ultimately you'll have a different experience. Now, for example, my department, I think if it's under $50,000, we can get 1 quote. That's fine. If it's 2 or 3 quotes we need to get, the SME policy states you need to actually include a Queensland SME in that mix of quotations. So all buyers across government are very aware of that. And we want to, the 30% target for the last financial year, it'll be announced very soon how we did against that. I think we got 28% across the 6 categories for the last 2 financial years, which was good. It's improving tremendously, but it is about marketing yourself. It is about promoting your brand across those departments. I have a contact list of vendor managers who are procurement people essentially, and you can connect with them in association with any business leads you may have. So we also have some events coming up later in the year. So I work quite closely with the Chief Procurement Office. There's a growing Queensland roadshows kicking off. So this will be going all around the state. All 6 categories are represented. I can provide the link for that one. They kick off, I think, on the 12th or 13th of October. First one is in Maryborough, of all places. And then they come to Brisbane City. We go as far north as Cairns. But it's a forum for suppliers to come and meet all government decision makers, category representatives. QBuild have a big presence in most of these gatherings. I'll be at most of them as well. But they are a good way just to sort of we try and limit the presentations. We want it to be an engagement session. We have a few short, insightful presentations. There will be things around the Olympics, of course, and the opportunities associated with that. But it's a good way to connect. They're usually in the morning, and I can provide the link for how you register for those. So yes, it's all about, like Thomas, I'm also a big supporter of the capability statement. Government buyers are bombarded with approaches from suppliers trying to sell them things. It is about building a relationship, but you need to show and demonstrate very concisely ideally in a 1 to 2 page statement, what you do, what services you provide, how they can engage you. Obviously, reference you're a Queensland business, but we can help with that. So yeah, I think in a nutshell, that's essentially what I do. I call myself a concierge. I try and help and connect people across government. And I think it's, with the support of Thomas's company as well, we've seen some vast improvements. So yeah, I think that's it from me.
Thanks, Matthew. Really, really do appreciate you giving us your time and insight and experience. And I know that a lot of people who are on here today would have picked up some good things from that. So thank you so much again. All right, I'm getting close to the end time, and of course I've gone over, so I don't want to skip through too quickly, but I've talk about 2Q32, the Olympics. Quick question. State government recently announced how much billion is forecast to be purchased in the next 9 years leading up to the 2032 Olympics. So just give answer this mentally: 46 billion, 69 billion, or 180 billion. Drum roll. The answer is $180 billion. This is a big number, huge opportunities. Some purchasing has already commenced for the Olympics. And again, go back to my previous statement earlier about there has not been a better time for small to medium businesses to start bidding for government contracts. The Olympics are a massive opportunity for our businesses throughout Queensland and the rest of Australia. Very quickly, I don't know, we're at 12:45 now, so please, you're not being rude if you want to shut off and there's only a couple of slides to go. But for those who want to hang around for the last couple of slides, I'll just wrap them up. So quite often get, what do we actually do? What does GovReady do? We essentially, we design customized government engagement plans, which are broken up into two main pieces. Firstly, there's the readiness piece, and outlining a lot of recommendations on how to be, and then, and one tiny example, that's capability statement. If you don't have one, get one. But yeah, we outline, we provide our clients with a clearly defined strategy on how to get ready, and then how to actually engage with government decision makers and government influencers the right way. And there's a lot that goes around that, but essentially, please, unless a government decision maker says, right, give me a pitch and sell, don't. We just need to know who you are, why you exist, what is the problem that your business solves. As many government decision makers need to know that as possible, so that when they do have that problem that your business can solve, well, there's opportunities can then come about. So those government engagement plans, really, that's, yeah, since we launched, that's the major piece of our business, and that's where we only work with small to medium businesses. We only work with them and help them diversify into government revenue streams. So I hope that gives you a bit of an idea. We get a lot of client testimonials and that, which is another thing that, if you join the dots, it's another thing that government like to see. It's third-party endorsements, awards, testimonials and things. This is an awesome company. We just did a handover with them a month or so ago, and they're already seeing some really good contracts coming through from their government engagement plan. So next steps, a lot of businesses are actually already ready for government contracts. Heaps aren't as well. We've developed a pulse check here, which is basically 22 questions. It takes you 10 minutes to complete. And analyze your business across 6 main areas, which are pretty important for government supply. I think Andrew might put the link in the chat if you want to. If not, go to our website. You'll see pulse check at the top right-hand side. And it'll give you a very good idea as to where your business is placed as of this very moment in time. On our webpage as well, you can. We got a lot of people who register for the newsletter. Every month we send out things around different opportunities for subscribers, insights, experience, events, you name it. We filter those out to our clients. you want to connect, here's all my direct contact details. If you want to catch up for a coffee, you want to have a chat, you want to pick my brains, yeah, there's all my contact details there. So love to talk with more of you. And I think the last slide, yeah. So here's a number of links which we've referenced throughout today, the last 50 minutes or so. They may help you as well. Register that for that first one. Definitely take you 2 minutes to register for the 2032 Olympics registration page, and then you'll be notified about Olympic related opportunities when they release, and they're going to ramp up more and more over the coming months and years. With that, I'm going to wrap up. I get sort of my own little world when I do these presentations, so I don't know if there's questions on the chat. I think we're out of time, so I'm not going to bother you with answering those now, but we'll endeavour to, if there are any questions there which I haven't addressed in this presentation, we'll come back to you over the next couple of days. You will receive a follow-up email with a link to the recording of this. I think we're also going to include the slide deck for you as well, and a couple of other things as well, and maybe a few of these links as well. So with that, thank you so much for everyone who has come here. My goal, hopefully, is that there's a few more businesses now who sort of might be starting to realise that there is a big opportunity here with government and all levels of government. And yeah, happy to have a chat with you more about that should you ever want to. So with that, I'm going to sign off. Thank you all for coming today, and yeah, enjoy the rest of your afternoons. Bye.